I was the charity case of the Miller family for 12 long years. At least, that's what my mother in law, Evelyn, told everyone at the Oak Ridge Country Club. I was Sarah, the quiet librarian from a broken home, the woman her son, Mark, had rescued from a life of coupons and public transit. But as I stood in the kitchen of our suburban Chicago home, I heard the sound that shattered my reality. My husband's voice, cold, calculated. "The papers are ready, Evelyn. Once she signs, we get the house, the trust, and I can finally bring Jessica home." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Before I tell you how I turned their world into ashes, I need to know something. Where are you joining me from today? Drop your city and state in the comments right now. I'm reading every single one. Because what happened next in this kitchen, it could be happening in your neighborhood right now. Mark walked in, looking every bit the successful architect I had helped him become. He didn't know I had the recorder running on my phone, tucked under a dish towel. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his eyes scanning the room but never meeting mine. He threw a manila envelope on the granite island. "Is this about the anniversary dinner?" I asked. My voice was a mere whisper. "It's about reality," he snapped. "I'm tired of carrying you. I want a divorce." I looked at the papers. Then I looked at the man I'd worked 2 jobs to put through grad school. And where am I supposed to go? "That's not my problem anymore. You're a librarian, Sarah. Go find a shelf to live on." He didn't know about the phone call I'd received an hour ago from a man who hadn't spoken to me in 20 years, my father's executor. "Mark," I said, my voice finally steady, "you're making a mistake." He laughed, a jagged, ugly sound. "The only mistake I made was marrying a penniless mouse." He walked out, slamming the door so hard the crystal vase on the counter rattled. I didn't cry. I picked up the phone. "Mr. Sterling, I'm ready to see what my father left behind." The office of Sterling and Associates was tucked away in a pre-war building downtown. It smelled of old paper and expensive tobacco. Mr. Sterling, an older man with sharp eyes, didn't offer me coffee. He offered me a seat. "Your father, Thomas, wasn't the man your mother told you he was, Sarah." He pushed a heavy black box across the mahogany desk. "He didn't leave you because he wasn't proud of you. He left because he was being hunted." My hands shook as I touched the cold metal. Hunted by who? By the same people who funded your husband's firm, the Millers. Inside the box wasn't a letter of apology, it was a ledger and a heavy antique key. "That key opens a private vault at First National," Sterling said. "In that vault is the controlling interest of Miller Architectural Group." I choked on my breath. "My husband's company? But Mark said his father started it from nothing." Sterling smiled thinly. "Mark's father started it with a $2 million loan from your father that was never repaid. Your father didn't sue. He simply took 60% of the equity in a silent trust, and he left it all to you." I sat there, the weight of the key pressing into my palm. For 12 years, I had been the poor relative. For 12 years, Evelyn had made me wash the dishes at family dinners while she talked about her investments. "What else is in the vault?" I whispered. "Evidence," Sterling replied, "of why your father had to disappear, and proof that Mark Miller hasn't just been cheating on you, he's been embezzling from the firm for years." I felt a cold fire ignite in my chest. "How do we proceed?" "You have 2 choices, Sarah. You can sign those papers and take a small settlement, or you can walk into that office on Monday as the new chairman of the board." I looked at the ledger. "I'm not signing anything." "Good." Sterling leaned back. "But first, we need to let them think they've won." The plan began to form, a strategic silence that would cost them everything. I went back to the house that night and acted like the broken woman Mark expected. I packed my things into cheap cardboard boxes. I even let Evelyn come over and supervise to make sure I didn't take any of the Miller heirlooms. "Don't touch that silver, Sarah," she sneered, pointing her manicured finger at a tea set. "That was in the family long before you crawled out of that trailer park." "Of course, Evelyn," I said, keeping my head down. "I wouldn't dream of it." Inside, I was screaming. Every insult she threw was another brick in the wall I was building to trap them. "Mark is bringing Jessica to the club tonight," she continued, admiring her reflection in the hallway mirror. "She's a senator's daughter, real class, something you could never understand." I paused, a stack of my old books in my arms. "I hope they're very happy, Evelyn." "Oh, they will be, especially once we liquidate your little savings account to pay for the wedding." I went to my room and locked the door. I didn't have a little savings account. I had the key to a kingdom. I called Mr. Sterling. "They're planning a wedding and a merger with the Sterling Cross Group." "I know. The merger is the trap. If they sign that deal without your approval as the majority shareholder, they're committing federal fraud. We let them get to the very edge of the cliff." Have you ever had to sit and smile at someone who was stabbing you in the back? Hit the like button if you've ever had to play the long game, because the next 3 weeks were the hardest of my life. I moved into a small, dingy studio apartment. I took a job at a local branch library working the late shift. I let Mark see me looking tired, worn out, and defeated when we met to discuss the final papers. "You look terrible, Sarah," he said, sliding a pen across the table at a coffee shop. "Life as a commoner suits you. Just sign the waiver for the company shares." I looked at the paper. It was a document stating I had no claim to Miller Architectural. "I'll sign it on Friday," I told him, "at your father's retirement gala." Mark grinned. "You want to do it in front of everyone? Fine. A little public humiliation might finally teach you your place." He had no idea. Friday night wasn't going to be his victory. It was going to be his funeral. The First National Bank felt like a fortress. My heels clicked against the marble floors, a sharp rhythmic sound that echoed my heartbeat. Mr. Sterling walked beside me, his briefcase chained to his wrist. "Are you ready for this, Sarah?" he asked softly. "I've been ready for 12 years, I replied. My voice didn't even shake. The vault door was a massive wheel of steel. When it groaned open, the air inside felt heavy. It smelled of cold metal and old secrets. Inside were rows of black deposit boxes. Sterling pulled out number 402. He used the key my father left me. "Look at this," Sterling said, pulling out a thick folder. "These aren't just stock certificates. These are the original incorporation papers." I ran my fingers over the embossed seal. Thomas Mitchell, 60% ownership. Mark's father only had 40%. My breath hitched in my throat. They've been lying to the board for decades. "Worse," Sterling said, his eyes darkening. "They've been using your father's name to secure loans, then funneling that money into offshore accounts." I felt a surge of cold fury. "So Mark isn't just a cheater, he's a thief." "Exactly. And since you own the controlling share, you're the only one who can stop the merger." Sterling looked at me intently. If they sign that contract with Sterling Cross on Friday, they're signing their own arrest warrants. I sat on a small stool, the weight of the evidence in my lap. I thought about all the times Mark told me I didn't understand business, all the times Evelyn made me feel like I was lucky to have a roof over my head. "Let them sign it," I whispered. Sterling raised an eyebrow. "Sarah? I want them to feel the moment they win. I want them to see the world at their feet." I looked him in the eye. "And then I want to be the one who pulls the rug out." Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever had someone treat you like you were invisible, only for you to realize you held all the cards? Drop a yes in the comments if you've ever had a secret victory. I'm reading every story. It's a risky game, Sterling warned. Not as risky as staying married to a man who's planning to replace me, I retorted. I stood up, smoothing my thrift store skirt. Let's get the rest of the documents. I have a gala to attend. The day I moved out of the Miller mansion, the sun was blindingly bright. I was carrying a tattered cardboard box labeled books. Mark was standing on the porch, his arms crossed, watching me like I was a stranger. Is that the last of it? He asked, his voice bored. Just about, I said, wiping sweat from my forehead. Good. Jessica's decorator is coming by 3. She wants to repaint the whole house. I stopped mid-step. My heart gave a painful throb. Repaint? We just did the kitchen last year. Mark laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. Jessica has taste, Sarah. She doesn't do rustic librarian. She does Upper East Side. I walked to my old Honda Civic, the one with the dent in the fender. Just as I was loading the box, Evelyn's black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. She stepped out, looking like she was heading to a funeral in her designer suit. Still here, Sarah? She sighed, not even hiding her disgust. I was just leaving, Evelyn. Make sure you didn't accidentally pack that gold clock from the mantel. It's been in the Miller family for generations. I felt the familiar sting in my eyes, but I forced it down. I only took what belonged to me, I said quietly. Which wasn't much, was it? She sneered. She walked closer, her expensive perfume cloying in the humid air. You know, Sarah, I almost felt sorry for you, but then I realized people like you are like weeds. She gestured to the sprawling lawn. You think if you grow in a nice garden, you become a flower, but you're still just a weed. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the desperation behind her pearls, the fear of losing the status she'd built on my father's money. You're right, Evelyn, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. Weeds are very hard to get rid of. They have deep roots. She scoffed and turned away. Mark, darling, come help me with these bags. I got into my car and drove away without looking back. I didn't go to my new apartment. I went to a high-end boutique downtown. I walked in, smelling of cardboard and sweat. The clerk looked me up and down with an expression that mirrored Evelyn's. Can I help you? She asked, her voice dripping with doubt. I pulled out the black card Sterling had given me. I need a dress for the Miller Gala, I said, my voice cold and clear. Something that says, owner. 2 days before the gala, I received a package at the library. It had no return address. Inside was a flash drive. When I plugged it into my laptop, my stomach dropped. It was a recorded series of Zoom calls between Mark and his father, Robert. The merger has to happen by the 15th, Robert's voice echoed through the tiny apartment. If we don't get the Sterling Cross capital, the auditors are going to find the hole in the accounts. I know, Dad, Mark replied. I could see him on the screen, pacing. Sarah is signing the waiver on Friday. She thinks she's just giving up her emotional claim to the house. Robert chuckled. She's a librarian. She sees a legal document and her eyes glaze over. My hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the desk. Then a woman walked into the frame on Mark's side. She was beautiful, golden hair, perfect skin. Jessica. Is the little mouse gone yet? She asked, leaning over Mark's shoulder. She's in a studio apartment on the south side, Mark said, pulling her onto his lap. By next week, she'll be a memory, and we'll have the Mitchell legacy all to ourselves. Wait, Jessica said, her eyes narrowing at the screen. What about the Mitchell Trust, the one her father started? Mark waved a hand dismissively. My dad took care of that years ago. Thomas Mitchell is dead or hiding. He's not coming for his 60%. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt thin. They weren't just divorcing me, they were erasing me. They were planning to use my father's stolen equity to build a new life for Jessica. I picked up the phone and called Sterling. They're talking about the 60%, I said, my voice a jagged edge. They know it exists, but they think they buried it. Then we let them dig their own graves, Sterling said. I finalized the injunction. The moment Mark signs that merger agreement, the bank will freeze every Miller asset. Including the house? I asked. Especially the house. You'll be the only one with the keys. I looked out the window at the gray Chicago skyline. I wasn't the little mouse anymore. I was the trap. Are you enjoying this story so far? If you want to see the Millers lose everything, hit that subscribe button right now. We're heading into the final countdown. The Oak Ridge Country Club was glowing like a jewel box. Valets were lining up Ferraris and Bentleys. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive champagne. I arrived in a black town car Sterling had arranged. I wasn't wearing my old library clothes. I was in a floor-length emerald silk gown that cost more than Mark's first car. My hair was swept up, and my father's old signet ring hung on a gold chain around my neck. As I walked toward the entrance, I saw the photographers. "Who is that?" someone whispered. "She looks familiar. Is that Sarah?" I ignored them and walked straight into the ballroom. The music was soft, sophisticated jazz. I saw them immediately, Mark, Evelyn, and Robert standing in the center of the room. Mark was in a tuxedo, looking like he'd just won the lottery. Jessica was on his arm, draped in white lace. I walked toward them, my head held high. "Sarah?" Mark's voice cracked. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. Evelyn's glass of champagne nearly slipped from her hand. "What are you doing here, and where did you get that dress?" "I'm here to sign the papers, Mark," I said, my voice calm. "Remember, you asked me to do it in front of everyone." Mark looked nervously. The important guests were starting to stare. "You look different, Sarah," Mark stammered. "It's called self-respect, Mark. You should try it sometime." Jessica stepped forward, her eyes scanning my jewelry. "I don't think we've met. I'm Jessica, Mark's fiancée." "I know exactly who you are," I said, giving her a thin smile. "The woman who's moving into my house on Monday. Or so you think." Robert Miller stepped in, his face a mask of false fatherly concern. "Now, Sarah, let's not cause a scene. We have the documents in the study." "No, Robert," I said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Let's do it here, on the stage, during your retirement speech." "Don't be ridiculous," Evelyn snapped. "Why?" I asked, my voice rising. "Are you afraid of a little transparency?" I saw Sterling enter the room from the side door. He gave me a short nod. The trap was set. The bait was me. "Fine," Robert said, his jaw tight. "If you want to be humiliated in public, Sarah, we'll oblige." I watched them walk toward the podium. They thought they were walking toward their future. They didn't realize they were walking toward the end. Robert Miller took the microphone. The room went silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice booming, "tonight we celebrate 30 years of Miller Architectural, and tonight we merge with Sterling Cross to become the largest firm in the Midwest." The crowd cheered. Mark stood beside him, looking like he'd just won the lottery. "But first," Robert continued, his eyes finding me in the crowd, "a small piece of family business. Sarah Mitchell, would you join us?" I walked up the stairs. Every eye in the room was on me. Mark handed me the pen and the waiver of my claims. "Just sign here, Sarah, and this will all be over." I took the pen. I looked at the crowd. "I have a statement first," I said into the microphone. "Sarah, don't," Robert started, but I ignored him. For 12 years, I was told I was a guest in this family. I was told that my father was a failure and that I was lucky to be a Miller. I looked directly at Evelyn, who was glaring at me from the front row. But I found something recently, a ledger and a set of incorporation papers. I pulled a folder from behind the podium. It turns out Miller Architectural was founded by Thomas Mitchell, my father. A murmur rippled through the room. Robert's face went from pale to a deep, angry red. "That's a lie," he shouted. "Then why does the state registry show that 60% of the voting shares are held by the Mitchell Trust?" I turned to the back of the room. "Mr. Sterling?" Sterling walked forward, holding a stack of legal documents. "As the legal representative for the Mitchell estate, I am here to inform the board that this merger is unauthorized." Mark grabbed the microphone. "This is a joke. Sarah, shut up." "The merger papers you just signed, Robert?" I said, my voice cold as ice. "They're invalid because I didn't sign them. And as the majority shareholder, I'm firing the entire executive board, effective immediately." The silence that followed was deafening. Then the doors at the back of the hall opened. 3 men in suits walked in. They weren't guests. They were from the SEC. "Robert Miller?" "Mark Miller," the lead agent asked. "We have a warrant for your financial records. We've been tipped off about some offshore discrepancies." I looked at Mark. His face was the color of ash. You did this," he whispered. "No, Mark," I said, leaning in close so only he could hear. "You did this. I just stopped hiding the evidence." The gala descended into chaos. Guests were whispering behind their hands, heading for the exits. Jessica was backing away from Mark like he was on fire. "Mark, what is he talking about?" she shrieked. "What discrepancies?" Mark didn't answer. He was staring at me, his eyes full of a mixture of hate and pure terror. "You're going to jail, Mark. And Evelyn, the silver, I'm taking it back." Evelyn rushed the stage, her face twisted in a mask of rage. "You little bitch! You ruined us! We gave you everything! I gave you a room in a house my father paid for, and you treated me like the help. Well, the help is taking over the mansion." The agents led Robert and Mark away for questioning. The room emptied out until it was just me, Sterling, and the cleaning crew. I sat on the edge of the stage, the heavy emerald dress suddenly feeling like armor. "Are you okay?" Sterling asked, putting a hand on my shoulder. "I feel lighter," I said. "For the first time in 12 years, I can breathe." "We have a lot of work to do, Sarah. The firm is in a mess, but you own it." I walked out of the country club. The night air was cool. I drove back to the mansion. I used my key, the real key, to open the front door. Evelyn was sitting in the dark in the living room, a bottle of wine in her hand. "You can't throw me out," she croaked. "I'm not throwing you out tonight, Evelyn, but the movers will be here at 8 a.m. I suggest you pack the things that actually belong to you." She looked up at me, and for the first time, she looked old. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore," I said, repeating Mark's words back to her. "Go find a shelf to live on." I walked upstairs to the master bedroom. I pulled the designer sheets off the bed and threw them on the floor. I slept in the guest room, the quietest, smallest room in the house. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't have any nightmares. It's 18 months since that night at the gala. 18 months since Miller Architectural became Mitchell Holdings. Mark is currently serving a 3-year sentence for corporate fraud. Evelyn? She's living in a small condo in Florida, funded by a very modest pension I allowed her to keep. Jessica disappeared the night of the gala. I heard she's dating a real estate mogul in Dubai now. Some people never change. As for me, I'm still a librarian at heart. I didn't sell the company. I turned it into a foundation. We design and build sustainable housing and public libraries in underserved communities. Every time I cut a ribbon on a new building, I think of my father. I think he'd be proud of what I did with his legacy. You've been with me through this entire journey, from that cold kitchen in Chicago to the podium at the country club. I have to ask, what part of this story hit you hardest? Was it Evelyn's weed comment or the moment Mark realized I owned the company? Where are you watching from? Drop your city and state in the comments. I want to see how far this message of empowerment has traveled. I'm reading every single comment, so tell me your thoughts. Do you know a Sarah? Someone who's being underestimated right now? Someone who feels like they're just a weed in someone else's garden? Share this video with them. Tell them their roots are deeper than they think. If you're that person and if you're feeling small today, listen to me. You are powerful. You are enough. You don't need a secret vault to be valuable. You just need the courage to stand up for yourself. Hit that subscribe button if you believe in justice. Like this video if you loved seeing the Millers get what they deserved. We're building a community here of people who refuse to be made small. Join us. This is Sarah Mitchell reminding you the quietest person in the room is often the one with the most power. Go out there and use yours.